Ladies and gentlemen, what I want to talk to you today is only one subject about the recyclability of plastics. I have talked about that before, but in another context, in presentations that were large and then people don't open it. So let's focus and discuss just one thing at a time. So if you allow me, I want to share my screen. Here they are. And I can, beg your pardon. So sharing the screen, and then I want to make it large. Bear with me for a moment. Yeah, there we have, beg your pardon, that is the wrong presentation. Sorry for that. I want to talk about plastics. This is the picture. So there we are. To talk about plastic recyclability, we need to talk about which options we have when you have plastics at the end of their life. So what we can do with plastics? Broadly, we can divide the plastics in biodegradable. Well, biodegradable plastics, they do exist. These are plastics like polylactide, polyhydroxybutyrate, polyalkanoate. No, those plastics, they have in their structure so that they will degrade, they will hydrolyze. And those plastics, they are amenable for composting. Those plastics exist. The pharmaceutical industry use them. The biomedical industry use them because those are the plastics that you want to implant in patients, and it will reabsorb. The organism will reabsorb those plastics as the bone, for instance, grows. This is a very no strategy. But now using those type of plastics for packaging, and when we talk about the plastic problem, 60% of the plastic problem are packaging plastics. Of course, using those plastics for packaging, it's not possible because they cost too much. The requirement for packaging is that they are very cheap. They must be cheap. So these plastics, no biodegradable plastics, is out of concern. There are some ideas, no, but this is not really plastic. Why don't we make bags of starch? Because they don't have stability. Because if you make them, they will destroy before you come home with your bag. They have zero stability. Another requirement for plastics is that they have physical stability. You don't want your product on the supermarket or when you go to the market to buy some fruits, you don't want your fruits on the floor because your bag did not resist, not even that. So this is not really a path. You need to have resistant, physically resistant plastics. That is what the market demands. And this is, of course, a problem in the afterlife, because if you throw that plastics in a landfill, it will not decompose. It takes 100 years to decompose completely. So plastics can be, a few classes of plastics are compostable, but this is really very few of them, and they are too expensive to be really useful. All the other plastics, including bioplastic, there is also the difference. What is bioplastic? Most of the plastics, as you know, they have a fossil origin. They come from oil, crude oil. Crude oil is cracked, and then from the cracked, monomers are produced. These monomers are polymerized, and then you have plastics. This can be also done from plant-based. So there are plant-based plastics like ethanol. You all know in Brazil, for instance, you have sugarcane ethanol. From ethanol from sugarcane, you can create plastics. And those plastics, if they are now polyethylene, no, PE, they have exactly the same characteristics as fossil PE. There is no difference. So a bioplastic has a bioorigin, but it's not degradable. It is exactly the same structure as an undifferentiated. You cannot differentiate the bioplastic from the fossil plastics because they have exactly the same molecular structure. So all the other plastics, except the biodegradable, they can be, of course, sent to different process. One of them is reuse. Of course, to a certain limited extent, you can reuse plastics. You cannot reuse plastic in the food industry. You cannot reuse plastic in the pharmaceutical industry. But there are plastics that you can just wash and reuse. But this is really limited applicability and not at all in the food and beverage industry because sanitary laws prohibit that. There is the risk of contamination. There is the risk that you contaminate the product. So that is the reason reuse is not really a good option. Then you have what people normally, the industry speak about recycling. In most cases, they are speaking about the mechanical recycling. The mechanical recycling can be just to melt the plastics and then you re-extrudate that plastics. You can do that. There are plastics that allow you to do more, but one important fact that is often not accounted, you can do 2-3 times because you're gonna lose the physical characteristic of the plastics. Your plastics will become brittle. It will lose the physical characteristic. And who wants that to have a plastic bottle that will break during transportation or in the aisle of the supermarket? Nobody wants that. So there is a very limited mechanical recyclability. And really, the industry that say that they are collecting the plastics for mechanical recyclability, this is usually not true. Most of the plastics today, 60%, are sent to landfill, 20% is sent to incineration, and recycling is in fact 3-5%. So it's a very small fraction of the produced plastics today are truly being recycled because mechanical recyclability does not work for many types of plastics. What about chemical then? Because that's the other options. You can have mechanical and you do chemical recyclability. Chemical recyclability is different because really, chemically speaking, plastics are indefinitely recyclable. You don't lose materials when you degrade the plastics to its element and reconstitute new plastics. That you can do forever. There are two basic processes of chemical recycle processes. One is pyrolysis, and the other one is gasification. The difference between pyrolysis and gasification is how the thermal treatments occur. You must understand that pyrolysis is an anoxic process, no oxygen whatsoever, no oxidation. You break the plastic internally, and what you produce is an oil, so-called pyrolysis oil, and char, coal, black coal. Both products can then be used in a tertiary process, secondary process, again, in different ways. But the primary product is the oil and the char. And what you do with the oil, many people are trying to use this oil for doing chemical synthesis, producing new plastics. That will be the circularity, new plastics out of pyrolysis oil. But I must warn that this is very difficult. If the plastics are mixed, if the plastics have different complex composition, if the plastics have contaminations, the oil that you produce will be too complex for simple separation. You have a lot of problem, and in the end, you will be burning the oil and share. Of course, if you want to incinerate Then there is a process that is direct. You can always, and probably everybody knows that, plastics burn. You can always incinerate the plastic and produce heat. With the heat of these plastics, you can, of course, boil water and produce steam, and with steam you can produce electricity. This is a different way. You are transforming the material and recovering the energy. This is not normally classified as recycling. It is energy recovery, but incineration is possible, and many countries do that with very good, excellent results. But another process that we have not talked yet is gasification. What's the difference between pyrolysis and gasification? Gasification is a limited oxidation. Incineration is the complete oxidation of the plastics. Now, if you have a substoichiometric or a limited amount of oxidants, you can do gasification. Gasification, the product of gasification is one. It is syngas. And syngas, the name stands for synthesis gas. And of course, is a gas that you can do chemical synthesis. Syngas is composed of carbon monoxide, and hydrogen. There is no CO2 in syngas. There is CO and hydrogen. Normally, in 2 molecules of hydrogen for each molecule of carbon monoxide. It is called syngas, or because it is for chemical synthesis. So this here can be sent to the chemical synthesis, to the chemical factory, and then new plastics can come out. New plastics, or the whole chemistry, all the chemical products can come out of syngas. But a very simple process is just to separate the syngas. And when you separate the syngas, what you get? Hydrogen and carbon monoxide. So this is how you convert plastics to hydrogen in a very simple way. This is what Recupera proposes for the recyclability, because the hydrogen can be used for decarbonization, and the CO is converted to methanol and then go back to new plastic synthesis. So this is a very straightforward way of recycling plastics. Thank you so much for that.